The foster kid my name is Sophia Chen, and I'm about to tell you how I went from being the unwanted foster kid bouncing between homes to utterly destroying the most prestigious medical dynasty in Seattle. You see, everyone thought I was just another charity case who got lucky. What they didn't know was that my dead biological father wasn't actually dead at all. He was Dr. David Chen, the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Seattle General, and he'd been watching me from the shadows my entire life. I stopped counting foster homes after the 15th one. By 18, I'd lived in 23 different houses, each one a reminder that I was temporary, disposable, unwanted. My earliest memory is of a social worker explaining that my mommy had gotten very sick and my daddy had died before I was born. The Hendersons kept me for 2 years, my longest placement. Mrs. Henderson even let me call her Mom sometimes. I thought maybe, finally, I'd found my place. Then they got pregnant with their biological child. "We need to focus on our real family now," Mrs. Henderson said while helping me pack those familiar garbage bags. Real family, as if I'd been playing pretend for 2 years. After that, I stopped trying to belong. I focused on school instead, because education was the only thing they couldn't take away from me. Straight A's became my armor, perfect test scores my escape route. The day I got my acceptance letter to the University of Washington with a full academic scholarship, I cried for the first time in years. Finally, I could stop being the foster kid and start being whoever I wanted to be. I chose pre-med, maybe because doctors had power, respect, and the ability to save lives. Or maybe because I'd spent so many years feeling broken that I wanted to learn how to fix things. That's where I met him, actually. At my weekend job, I serve coffee at the campus medical center. Dr. Ryan Matthews was a third-year resident in pediatrics, already being groomed to take over his family's private practice. Everything about him screamed privilege, but when he looked at me, there was something different in his eyes. "You're in my anatomy class, aren't you?" he asked one Tuesday morning. "Sophia, right? You're the one who always answers Professor Martinez's impossible questions." I nearly dropped the cup I was holding. Ryan Matthews knew my name. We started studying together, then grabbing meals between classes, then taking long walks around campus. Ryan made me feel normal for the first time in my life. Not special, not broken, just normal. "I've never met anyone like you, Sophia," he told me one evening. "You make me want to be better than I am." I fell for him completely. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Safe, steady, like coming home. Before we continue, if you're as shocked by what's coming as I was, please hit that subscribe button. Trust me, what this medical dynasty does to try to destroy her is going to leave you speechless. 8 months into our relationship, Ryan invited me to his family's annual charity gala, Seattle's most exclusive medical event, where the city's elite came to write large checks and network over champagne. The gala was held at the Four Seasons, every detail perfect and expensive. I wore a simple black dress I'd bought secondhand but altered to fit perfectly. Nothing flashy, but elegant enough to pass inspection. Ryan's parents were holding court near the silent auction display. Dr. Richard Matthews was distinguished by the kind of presence that commanded respect. His wife, Dr. Catherine Matthews, was equally impressive, her intelligent eyes taking in everything. "Mom, Dad," Ryan said as we approached, "I'd like you to meet Sophia Chen." Dr. Catherine turned toward me with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sophia, how lovely to finally meet you." The conversation started normally enough, but then came the question I'd been dreading. "And your family? Are they also in medicine?" Richard asked. "I actually grew up in foster care," I said. "I don't have family in the traditional sense." The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Catherine's smile became more fixed. Richard's eyebrows raised almost imperceptibly. I could see it in their eyes. The shift, the categorization, the quiet reassessment of who I was and what that meant for their son. "How challenging that must have been," Catherine said finally. "You've certainly overcome a great deal." But the damage was done. I was no longer a promising medical student. I was a foster kid with no background, no connections, no family legacy to contribute to their dynasty. What followed was months of subtle psychological warfare. Invitations to family events that always included other young medical professionals, particularly Emma Harrison, whose family had been friends with the Matthews for generations. Casual comments about the importance of compatibility in medical marriages. The pressure campaign was sophisticated. His family was too polished for direct confrontation. Instead, they used a slow, methodical approach, designed to make Ryan question whether our differences were insurmountable. "Sophia," Catherine said during one private conversation, "have you thought about how your background might affect your future career plans? Emergency medicine is so demanding, and without family support to help navigate the challenges." The message was clear. I wasn't suitable for their world. I watched Ryan slowly retreat from defending me. At first, he'd change the subject when his family made pointed comments. Then he'd make excuses for their behavior. Finally, he stopped acknowledging their comments at all. "Don't you think your parents are being obvious?" I asked one night after a particularly brutal dinner. "They're just protective," Ryan said, not meeting my eyes. "They want what's best for me. And I'm not what's best for you? Maybe we should think about whether we're compatible long-term, whether our goals align." My heart stopped. Our goals do align. We both want to help people. But your career path is different from mine. More unpredictable. My family needs stability, tradition. The final blow came at Ryan's birthday dinner. His parents had organized a celebration at their private club, and I walked into a setup so blatant that even Ryan couldn't pretend not to see it. Emma Harrison was there with her younger sister Claire, a beautiful resident in pediatric cardiology who'd just returned from Johns Hopkins. Claire was everything I wasn't, from a medical family, socially connected, and financially secure. "Claire, meet Sophia," Catherine said with a smile that looked like a weapon. "Sophia's been keeping Ryan company while you were away. Keeping him company. Like I was a temporary placeholder until the real contender arrived." I watched Ryan's face as he hugged Claire, saw the familiarity between them, the ease of shared history. I saw his parents watching with approval, as if this reunion was exactly what they'd been waiting for. "Excuse me," I said quietly and walked out. Ryan found me in the club's garden. "Sophia, I can explain." "Can you? Because it looks like your family just introduced you to your future wife." "My family has certain ideas about who I should be with. And you agree with them. I think maybe they're right that we want different things. I want to make my family proud, carry on what they've built. I want a life that fits with the expectations I was raised with. And I don't fit. I'm choosing the life I was born to live." I walked away from him, from his family, from the future I'd foolishly thought we might build together. I didn't cry until I was safely in my apartment, and then I cried for hours. 3 years later, I was in my second year of residency at Harborview, working the overnight shift in trauma. I'd heard that Ryan had married Claire Harrison. Their wedding had been featured in Seattle Metropolitan Magazine. Medical royalty unites. The letter arrived on expensive stationery, delivered by courier to the hospital. No return address, but elegant handwriting that made my hands tremble as I opened it. "Dear Sophia, I know this letter will come as a shock, but I am your biological father, Dr. David Chen, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at Seattle General. Your mother, Lin Wei, was a brilliant medical student when we met. When she became pregnant, we made the difficult decision that neither of us was ready for parenthood. She died from complications during childbirth, something I've carried as grief and guilt for 25 years. I was told the adoption had been arranged, that you were safe with your new family. It wasn't until recently that I learned you'd entered the foster system instead. I have spent 2 years working with investigators to find you. If you are willing to meet with me, I would be honored to explain everything. I have so much to tell. You about your mother, about the medical legacy that flows in your blood. With love and hope, Dr. David Chennai read the letter 3 times before the words sank in. My father was alive. Not only alive, but one of the most respected cardiac surgeons in the Pacific Northwest. The foster kid who'd been told she had no family was actually the daughter of medical royalty. I met Dr. Chen at a small cafe 3 days later. He looked like me. The same dark eyes, the same determined set to his jaw. When he stood up as I approached, I saw my own height, my own careful way of moving. "Sophia," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Thank you for coming." For 3 hours, he told me everything. About my mother, Lin Wei, whose research on pediatric cardiology had laid the groundwork for current surgical techniques. About how the adoption had fallen through, how he'd been told I was placed with a loving family. "Your mother was extraordinary," he said, showing me photographs. "She had your focus, your determination. She would have been so proud." He explained how he'd found me through a medical journal photo of me receiving the Resident Excellence Award. I saw this picture and realized my daughter was achieving everything her mother and I had dreamed of, and she was doing it completely, alone. I couldn't let that continue. Over the following months, my father gradually introduced me to a world I'd never known existed. Dr. David Chen wasn't just a respected surgeon. He was one of the most influential voices in Seattle's medical community, serving on hospital boards, research committees, and professional organizations. "The Matthews family," he said one evening. "I know them, of course. Richard and I have served on several committees together." I'd mentioned Ryan in passing, explaining my choice of emergency medicine over more prestigious specialties. "You know about Ryan?" I asked. "I know about all of it," he said quietly. "Word travels in medical circles about families who consider themselves gatekeepers of medical excellence. It doesn't matter now. Ryan made his choice. Perhaps. But choices have consequences, and sometimes those consequences take years to fully manifest." 6 months later, I attended the Seattle Medical Foundation's annual Excellence Awards Gala as my father's guest. He was receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award, and he'd specifically asked me to be there. "I want to introduce my daughter to my colleagues," he'd said, properly this time. The ballroom was filled with Seattle's medical elite, and there, near the bar, was the entire Matthews family. Ryan saw me first, his face cycling through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been regret. When my father took the stage to accept his award, he said the words that changed everything. This award means everything, because tonight, I have the privilege of sharing this moment with my daughter, Dr. Sophia Chen, who is currently excelling in her emergency medicine residency at Harborview Medical Center. The silence in the room was complete. Every medical professional in Seattle was processing what they'd just heard. Sophia Chen, the foster kid dismissed as unsuitable for medical royalty, was actually the daughter of one of the most respected physicians in the Pacific Northwest. I stood up, accepting the applause, but my eyes were locked on the Matthews family. Richard's face had gone pale. Catherine looked like she'd swallowed something bitter. Ryan stared at me as if seeing a ghost. Within months, consequences began rippling through Seattle's medical community. Not because I sought revenge, I had no need for it, but because my father had a long memory and little patience for families who valued social status over medical excellence. Research grants that had routinely been approved for Matthews family projects suddenly faced scrutiny. Committee appointments were no longer automatic. Professional opportunities became competitive instead of guaranteed. Claire's research funding was rejected. Ryan's fellowship applications were declined. The Matthews family practice began losing referrals from colleagues who preferred to work with physicians they respected both professionally and personally. Meanwhile, my own career flourished. Research opportunities appeared, mentorship offers arrived, and my work began gaining national recognition. The difference was that now I was Dr. Sophia Chen, daughter of the renowned Dr. David Chen, rather than Sophia the foster kid with no background. The confrontation came on a rainy Thursday evening. I was leaving the hospital when I found Ryan waiting by my car, looking terrible, thinner, exhausted, desperate. "Sophia, please, I need to talk to you. My career is falling apart. Claire's research was rejected. My fellowship applications keep getting declined. Please, you have to help us." "I have to help you?" I stared at him in disbelief. "Your father has so much influence. If you could just put in a good word." "You're asking me to use my family connections to help your career. The same family connections you rejected me for not having. I know how it sounds, but it sounds like you're exactly the person I thought you were. Someone who values connections over character." Ryan's composure cracked. "I loved you, Sophia, but my family convinced me we were too different. And you believed them because it was easier than fighting for us." "Yes," he whispered. "I was weak. I chose the safe path. You know what the saddest part is? You could have had both. You could have had love and your family's respect if you'd had the courage to stand up to them." I drove away, but before leaving, I rolled down my window. "Ryan, I hope you find happiness, but it won't come from shortcuts or connections. It'll come when you finally decide to be the person you were meant to be, instead of the person they wanted you to become." A year later, I was appointed chief resident in emergency medicine at Harborview, the youngest person ever to hold the RAW position. Ryan called that night to congratulate me and tell me he was joining Doctors Without Borders, finally choosing medicine as service over family expectations. 2 years after that, I was finishing my residency with offers from top programs across the country. My research had been published in the New England Journal of Medicine, and I'd been invited to speak at conferences nationwide. But the moment that felt like true victory came when I established the Lin Wei Chen Foundation for Medical Education, providing scholarships for students from foster care and challenging backgrounds, because I'd learned that the greatest victory isn't destroying those who rejected you. It's lifting up others who are walking the same difficult path you once traveled alone. At the Foundation's launch, I spoke to a room full of medical students and residents. Medicine is supposed to be about healing, about using our knowledge to help others in their most vulnerable moments. But too often, we get distracted by status, by tradition, by the idea that some lives matter more than others. I paused, looking at the young faces in the audience, many of them first-generation college students, immigrants' children, people who'd worked multiple jobs to pay for their education. The foster kids, the scholarship students, the residents, working 3 jobs. They often understand something that those born to privilege sometimes forget. That medicine is a calling, not just a career. That our patients don't care about our family names. They care about whether we have the knowledge to save their lives and the compassion to treat them with dignity. 5 years later, I was appointed Director of Emergency Medicine at Seattle General Hospital, the same hospital where my father had built his legendary career. The foster kid who was told she had no family had not only found one, but was building a legacy that would help countless others. My father, now considering retirement, often joined me for coffee in my office. "Your mother would be so proud," he said one afternoon. "I think she would be proud of both of us," I replied, "for finding each other, for building something meaningful together." As I finished reviewing scholarship applications for the foundation, my phone buzzed with a text from my husband, Michael. "Emergency surgery running late. Can you pick up Emily from daycare? Emily, our adopted daughter, a bright 6-year-old who'd spent her first 4 years in foster care before finding her way to us. Every night when I tucked her into her permanent bed in her forever home, I remembered what it felt like to pack belongings in garbage bags. 10 years after that first gala revelation, I delivered the keynote address at the American College of Emergency Physicians annual conference. When I was 5 years old, I became a ward of the state. For 13 years, I was told I had no family, no background, no legacy to claim. I paused, looking out at hundreds of emergency medicine physicians from across the country. But here's what I learned. The most important background you can have is the knowledge of what it means to need help. The most valuable legacy you can claim is the commitment to serve others. And the only family connections that truly matter are the ones you build through compassion, integrity, and shared purpose. Sophia's story teaches us that true belonging isn't something you're born into. It's something you create through your actions, your values, and your commitment to others. When people reject you based on their prejudices, they're revealing everything about themselves and nothing about you. The Matthews family didn't reject Sophia because she was lacking. They rejected her because they were too limited to recognize her value. Real power doesn't come from inherited privilege. It comes from understanding struggle, choosing compassion over convenience, and using whatever influence you gain to lift others up. Sophia's victory wasn't in the destruction of those who wronged her. It was in her ability to transform pain into purpose, rejection into resilience, and isolation into a legacy of inclusion. The foster kid who was told she had no family ended up building one of the most meaningful legacies in Seattle's medical community. And that's the most powerful revenge of all. Not getting even, but getting better. Have you ever been judged based on your background? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. Every foster kid, every scholarship student, every person who's been told they don't belong deserves to know that their background isn't a limitation. It's a superpower waiting to be unleashed.